The opinions of the commentator or commentators are solely those of the commentators and not of CJAD 800 or Bell Media.
For professional advice with a personal touch, consult Fuller Landau, Chartered Professional Accountants and Business Advisors. Click on flmontreal.com.
7:05 on CJAD 800. Welcome to today's Entrepreneur, presented by Fuller Landau, a program about the entrepreneurial spirit that drives Quebec business. My name is Dan Delmar, along with Fuller Landau's Josh Miller. Good evening, Josh.
Hello.
And we're pleased to welcome back our annual champion, our favorite guest, and not just because he brings us cookies, Michael Eskenazi.
Although that does help.
Michael Eskenazi, the founder of Mr. Felix and Mr. Norton. Michael, welcome back to today's Entrepreneur.
Thanks a lot, Dan.
And you have a lot of news to share. But first, for those that haven't tuned into our previous episodes with you, our previous chats, everyone knows Felix Norton, but tell us a little bit about Felix Norton and how it started.
Last Friday was a very special day. It was our 30th anniversary. 30 years ago, I opened the very first Felix and Norton shop in Snowdon on Queen Mary and DeCarry, very nervously, wondering if people would actually show up and pay for the cookies that everybody loved when I gave them away. And knock wood, they did, and they keep buying them.
30 years. Congratulations.
Thank you so much.
And news in the last week, Dan, have you ever picked up on anything special that we should chat about before
let's do that. I actually completely forgot about our news segment.
Well, this is what we're here for.
Scrambling at the last minute here to get into studio, but let's review, of course. Michael might as well join us in on the conversation here. Mm-hmm. So let's go over some of the stories making entrepreneur news today. And shall we begin with? Did you want to talk a little bit about, retail?
Can always talk about retail.
Okay. My computer's crashing here. I'm sorry, Josh. Maybe we can start with a chat with Michael first, and then we'll get into the stories in a little bit.
Yeah, I think one of the stories that you were going to lead to that we read up on is about China and the entrepreneurs in China that are really coming out strong. You know, a lot of people used to go work for government or state-owned or enterprises, and the number of entrepreneurs that don't want to go into that aspect and that want to come out and just start their own business, whatever it might be, is truly staggering. And what does that mean for us here? I mean, does that mean that they'll find that Michael, you'll have your next competitor coming out of China because they'll find something? Probably more on the tech side that will be a competition, but entrepreneurs that know they have to stay ahead of the curve and really make a difference with whatever product or service are going, the number of competitors are going to grow fiercely as the entrepreneurs in China start building and growing. And I mean, it's just sheer numbers. It's going to happen, and they're going to fight. And there's even worse, or better for them, I guess, is that there's a lot of money sitting, stagnant in China, with people wanting to invest, with people wanting to find ways to get it out of the country. And this will be a great opportunity for those to invest in startups and entrepreneurs to build it and find a way to move it out.
I do have my list of stories now, and that story refers to youth in China particularly, which is kind of interesting, now getting more into entrepreneurship, where their parents usually relied on government jobs. So we're seeing a new middle class of entrepreneurs in China.
It is. Again, it's a question of there's more dollars are there. There's no shortage of money in China. The question is, where are they putting it? Where are they investing in? And the state-owned enterprises are maybe not flourishing as much as they used to. And I think there's going to be a big trend, and it's already started, of these entrepreneurs setting up shop, finding ideas, creating and building huge businesses that will emanate from there and extend to the rest of the world.
Shopify, which is a Canadian company in Ottawa, just filed an IPO for over $100 million in New York and Toronto. And now, as a result, Ottawa is being called the Silicon Valley of Canada.
Kind of weird to think of Ottawa as a Silicon Valley of Canada. I mean, although I guess Waterloo for a long period of time, and still is that, I guess, can fall under that title as well. So a lot of little towns that happen, but Ottawa, listen, the fact is that there's plenty of money there. It's a lot of politics. They want to raise funds. It is a center It's bilingual. They can reach a whole number of people, and there is money there too. Certainly, with whatever politics drives, there's plenty of dough to be had in Ottawa. So these tech companies that need, money to fuel their burn rate, but that can absolutely grow and take off, it's not necessarily a bad place to be.
Should we talk about the maple syrup situation, which is kind of funny?
It's like the OPEC of the maple syrup world.
Yes.
It's kind of crazy how it's regulated and a little mafia-esque possibly. But I think here it's and I don't know how many people understand or know the maple syrup business, but it is very regulated. There is an association or an independent group, government group that does regulate and monitor sales and pricing and all that. But to the point that it might even be hurting entrepreneurs. And I think they really have to, like any entrepreneur, you have to follow the rules. But I guess you also have to be creative and make sure while you're following them, you find ways to make a few extra bucks. Because there's no doubt the competitors south of the border or wherever they are going to find ways to get into that market.
Michael, have you ever used maple syrup in one of your products and dealt with the cartel, so to speak?
Well, I mean, just a little bit. We did make a seasonal flavor with little maple syrup chips in a maple walnut cookie, but I can't say that I ever really got very far into the whole cartel. I just bought them and used them as an ingredient.
It's just safer that way.
So basically, I mean, what's going on is there's more pressure now from other markets who are also producing maple syrup and who are catching on to Quebec's system. But Quebec is sort of still stuck in the old way of doing things and maybe used to sort of doing things a certain way, but they're going to have to adapt to some of those outside challenges now.
It certainly seems that way. And as the world gets smaller and there's more people that invest and they see an opening in the market or a vulnerability, it's going to happen. So is Quebec going to have to kind of look at their regulations and see what else they should be doing in order to not lose the status that Quebec has worked so long to create? Very possibly so.
Burger King and Tim Hortons, they're working out pretty well after their marriage, of course. So what do you think of this long term in terms of direction? Because these are two restaurants with two sort of unique identities, right? Tim Hortons is sort of more not your average fast food restaurant. It has more of a Canadian identity, let's just say. How do you think is that a challenge really to preserve that kind of Canadian vibe in now what is a larger American corporation?
It might be, but the reality is they're really successful because they understand their markets. They know, we always say on the show, know your audience. The entrepreneur has to know their audience. Okay, these are maybe not on the entrepreneurial level, it's big business, but they still have to know their audience and they still have to know their target markets, and they better do it right. Didn't work with Target. They didn't know their target markets, but doing Burger King and the U.S., and Tim Hortons in Canada, I think it's an excellent collaboration. They'll understand their markets. They'll certainly have huge economies of scale, as I'm sure they're experiencing, which is probably one of the reasons towards their improved bottom line. But again, it's knowing their market. And I think with their collaboration of north and south of the border, they'll be able to retain their specific identities and maybe enhance them as they each go on their respective sides.
And finally, if you have a good idea you think will make a lot of money, Google might want to buy it from you.
This is, I guess, Google is another big business that might be taking advantage of the smaller guy. They certainly are sitting on billions of dollars and billions of revenue. And what better way to take over the next best thing than to say, hey, entrepreneur, you have a great idea, you're kind of floundering, you don't know where to go, and you want to make some money, sell it to us. We got loads of it sitting in our pockets, and for them, to roll the dice, and it's probably cheap by comparison to all the investment and time that they're doing. So it's I guess it's an interesting aspect from Google's standpoint to look for the next best thing for them instead of relying purely on their internal people. And entrepreneurs, listen, I guess it's another venue to take advantage of if you want to capitalize on something that you think you've built. It just might be too quick of a way out. So I would say entrepreneurs, be a little bit wary of the big boy in town.
Today's Entrepreneur on CJAD 800. More with Michael Eskenazi of Felix and Norton celebrating his 30th anniversary in just a moment. But first, it's 7:15.
For professional advice with a personal touch, consult Fuller Landau, Chartered Professional Accountants and Business Advisors. Click on flmontreal.com.
Coming up to 7:18 on today's Entrepreneur, we're joined by Michael Eskenazi of Felix and Norton and Josh. 30 years ago this week, they're celebrating their anniversary, and it's pretty incredible. Michael, did you ever think that 30 years ago you'd be setting up shop in the United Arab Emirates?
No, I don't think that thought ever crossed my mind, even, never mind 30 years ago, even 2 years ago. It really wasn't on my target list. But some wonderful people from the Emirates who studied at Concordia, got MBAs here, and absolutely fell in love with Felix and Norton, just said, hey, this would really work in our home. Can we talk? And they talked, and I listened, and got to know them, which was really the first part. The most important part was their compatibility between us in personally and our business goals, and I just really became very fond of them, as did they of my wife and myself. And over time, it took about a year and a half of discussion and negotiation, and in January we opened our first shop there.
Now you're talking with them for the first time. I mean, they don't know your product at all, or they know it from a consumer standpoint? They're young, they're ambitious. Was it difficult to? And they certainly, it's a different business. Even though they studied here, not exactly the same business culture between here and there. Do you find there was a difficulty there, or in that type of discussion? Did you find that you had to kind of convince them a little bit on how to operate and what might work over there?
I think that they were a lot more advanced than you're giving them credit for. When I got to the Emirates, I was so surprised to see how many brands from here were already there. In our mall, there was a Second Cup, there was Tim Hortons, and probably 30 different American franchise chains that we all know. It is very common now for brands to go to that market, and so many of the people travel a lot and have studied abroad and are aware of Western ways of doing business. It's a very, very advanced society in so many ways.
Were you skeptical of it ever working? I mean, did you ever kind of venture into another jurisdiction that maybe didn't work before?
Well, there was an attempt about 6 or 7 years ago where we went quite far with some people for opening up in Mexico City, and then that kind of went off the rails. But one of the things that happened was I was very reticent, saying, I'm very focused on rebuilding my brand here in Montreal. This is where I see, or in Canada anyway, this is where I see the growth potential, and I'm still a small business, and I don't have time to give you, and what you need from me to help get set up is my time. So they, because I was reticent and they were really passionate about it, they did a lot of selling to me about what a great economy they have and how big the opportunity was. And it really opened my eyes to the potential in that market.
Certainly, you were, in the envious position of them wanting you more than you were seeking out them. When you're dealing with these brand new people, and you kind of, before you get into bed with them, do you consider background checks? How do you kind of vet them to make sure that your comfort level is satisfied?
Well, of course, I did as much as I could in terms of what I could find out about them, and asking them for their personal history and CVs. But more than that, I asked them to come to Montreal and spend time with me, and they did, and they spent quite a bit of time here. And I said, just as important as me getting to know them is them getting to know me. And I was completely open book about my successes and my failures, so that they understood that it was a business that there was no guarantee. It isn't necessarily a road to riches, not without a lot of hard work and a lot of attention to detail.
And was there ever a point in that whole process where there was a question mark of continuing, kind of a go, no go point, or did everything really go smoothly?
No, there was a long delay that was caused by one of the two partners dropping out. And the other partner, who had other business interests, was not sure. And just a year ago, he came to Montreal as we did a big trade show at the Palais de Congrès, a food show. And he spent the week with me and stood stood in our booth during the food show, and was so overwhelmed by the reaction of thousands of people coming by our booth and going, "Felix and Norton, these are the best cookies I've ever had in my life. I know that I used to go to your store on St. Catherine Street, and I did, and people biting into our product and breaking into such big smiles." And he saw the passion, and that's when he said, "Okay, we got to close this deal."
It's excellent to hear, and I'm sure you've learned a number of lessons, whether be it the not so great deal that didn't happen in Mexico, the Emirates. So when we come back, we'll kind of listen to a lesson or two that you've learned along the way about dealing with international business.
Michael Eskenazi of Felix and Norton, celebrating 30 years in business on today's Entrepreneur at 7:23.
For professional advice with a personal touch, consult Fuller Landau, Chartered Professional Accountants and Business Advisors. Click on flmontreal.com.
7:25 on today's Entrepreneur. In studio with us, Michael Eskenazi of Felix and Norton. Josh, and international expansion now for Felix and Norton, and that brings a whole bunch of different challenges.
No question, and there's no doubt that it's great that people here, they have the passion for the cookies. They know it. It's a North American market. The market in the Middle East is no doubt different. The cultures are different. Michael, when you were kind of discussing with your now partners over there, what were the biggest obstacles or hurdles or discussions or deals that you had to overcome or see to say that, to get them to, or get that culture there to understand, hey, these are also the best cookies and this is what it should be?
Actually, that wasn't really that much of a challenge. I sent over lots of cookie dough for them to share, and they did their own market research with people around them, and they were just thrilled with the reaction they got. Everybody that they offered them to said, "Wow, these are the best cookies I've ever had, and we'd love to be able to buy them here. Bring them in."
So listen, market research, whether it's here or there, is always hugely important. So I'm glad they did. But with the experience you had, Mexico experience with the Emirates, is there a particular lesson or two that you've learned that you walk away with knowing, listen, this is something I absolutely have to ensure happens when there is a next time?
Well, and there were many opportunities over the years. There are so many people who used to live in Montreal who now live somewhere else, who long for our cookies, and who got in touch with me and said, "I really want to open a Felix and Norton store in Houston, in Paris, in Tokyo, in Miami." And they were always people who were tired of their job and wanted to open a store. But they wanted me to be their partner and help them finance it. And even the folks in Mexico City were undercapitalized. The United Arab Emirates is a place that everybody knows has a lot of financial resources. And these people were ready to invest not just in the one store, but in making a commitment to open multiple locations and to make a sizable payment up front that would secure the rights, because they have the rights not just for the Emirates, but for the entire Arabian Gulf area, for all the countries there. And they are looking to expand and grow. And that's the only way. You need a base to work from. One store far away just costs too much and can't support all the costs at their end and at my end that would be necessary to make the business work.
There's certainly the relationship that you had to work at, the business side, the logistics of shipping the goods and cookies and dough. There's no doubt has to be a legal side that you had to delve into and make sure the agreements are all cross T's and I's dotted, and make sure you protect yourself. Was that a difficult process or a lengthy process?
Everything in our dealings was a lengthy process. Everything moves very slowly in overseas, or certainly in that part of the world. The speed of getting things done is much slower than what we're used to here. But we negotiated a contract, and it did take a long time. There were a lot of back and forth. They did receive a sizable chunk of financing from the Emirati, an investment fund that helps their citizens build businesses. And of course, like any government organization, there was a ton of red tape. So every week or sometimes every day, I would get a panic call going, now they're asking for this. Can you help me prepare this document, this form? They need to see this. And we did what it took to help him secure his financing.
Well, there's no doubt it takes a lot to launch a brand in a new place, but when you're relaunching a brand here in your own hometown, it also takes a lot of work and effort. And when we come back after the break, we'll talk about the relaunch and the nice colors that we're staring at right now for Felix and Norton cookies.
Michael Eskenazi, our guest of Felix and Norton, celebrating their 30th anniversary this week. Today's Entrepreneur on CJAD at 7:30. CJAD 800 News with Kelly LaParre. Kelly?
For professional advice with a personal touch, consult Fuller Landau, Chartered Professional Accountants and Business Advisors. Click on flmontreal.com.
7:33 on today's Entrepreneur, a program about the entrepreneurial spirit that drives Quebec business. My name is Dan Delmar, along with Fuller Landau's Josh Miller. And Josh, our pretty much annual chat with Michael Eskenazi of Felix and Norton, one of our favorite entrepreneurs, and not just because of the delicious cookie factor, of course.
Although that does help.
It does. It definitely helps. But we're talking about Michael's international expansion to the UAE. Near Dubai, which presents some pretty interesting challenges for businesses owners.
And no question, and I know we want to get into kind of the launch or relaunch here in Montreal and Quebec and Canada, but just before there, and there's always so many business lessons to learn in our own backyard. But I was just wondering, just before we get into the next topic, Michael, was there a lesson that your business partner in the Emirates learned, or whether we learned from you or realized, what was maybe one of the biggest lessons when he's first started?
Well, when he was here, I was telling him a lot of our history. And one of the stories that I told was that when I first got the idea of Felix and Norton, I wanted to open on St. Catherine Street. And I spoke with a number of landlords who said, sorry, we won't rent to you because St. Catherine Street is so expensive. And if you make mistakes, you will go under and your business will die. Go open in a suburban area, as I did on Queen Mary, learn your business, and when you're ready, then come to St. Catherine Street. And 2 years later, I opened on St. Catherine Street, and we did fantastic. But I did make a lot of adjustments and a lot of changes and learn a lot about my business. So he thought about that, and instead of opening in the crazy expensive Dubai Mall, where rents can be unheard of amounts of $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 a month rent, he said, let's open in his hometown, which is an hour away from Dubai, in a beautiful big mall, but it's still not the same kind of cost and pressure, and it was right under his nose. And he opened in the city of Al Ain, and he's learning the business, and he is also making a number of adjustments to the business. And shortly, they're negotiating a second lease now in the second largest city in Abu Dhabi, and he hopes that by the early in 2016 or late 2015, he'll be ready to go after the major fantastic malls in Dubai.
The reality is, it's a lesson that applies pretty much anywhere in the world. Yeah. You know, if you're not sure and you're starting out, better to tweak in a smaller location before you get up and possibly blow your brains out in a bigger one. Exactly. So now let's shift back home. And you know, people have known Felix Norton for obviously 30 years, as we keep mentioning. Happy anniversary. But there's no question, there's always a reinvention of maybe not the product in this moment, but certainly the look and freshening things up. At what point did you realize, Michael, or did you decide to say, hey, you know what, time to kind of change it up a little bit?
Well, you know, we had to refresh our look. We felt that it was getting old and tired a little bit, and we were trying to be noticed, that but yet still be recognized, not totally change things so that people will think we're a new company, but still be recognizable as Felix and Norton, which is one of the changes we made. We're no longer Monsieur Felix and Mr. Norton, but simply Felix and Norton, which is what everybody's been calling us anyway for years.
Because it's really very much a balancing act. You don't want to harm the magnificent image and story and knowledge and brand that you have, but yet you still want to make it a little bit different, a little bit brighter, and a little bit more today.
And it's different. For many years, we had our own shops, and we sort of had a big space. But now we're in IGAs and Metro grocery stores, and we're sharing shelf space with thousands of other products. And we really have to make sure that we do the best we can with that couple of feet of shelf space.
Now, where do you start? I mean, rebuilding a brand, choosing colors and all that. What is step number one? Or what was it for you?
Surround yourself with some people who really understand branding and graphics, and do a lot of analysis and brainstorming with them, so that we can find something that really can work for packaging, for marketing, that's going to resonate, and as I said, still make people remember what we were, but give them that fresh new excitement for where we're going.
A long process, like from beginning until you've recently redone the packaging. How long did it take?
In actuality, it's been about a 4 or 5 year program, because first there was one step with one terrific designer that we worked with, and then there was a second step over the last 12 or 15 months with a terrific team of very creative people.
And is it a question of, like, when you're relaunching and rebranding, obviously the cookie, the product itself, that's central, but do you look at changing colors? Do you look at taglines? Do you look at did you really just kind of break it down and start from the ground up and look at everything piece by piece?
Well, yeah, but you don't, those things are more results, what you've just mentioned. The first thing is just to really make sure everybody understands what we are, what we represent to people. And Felix and Norton is all about fun. And conveniently, F and N, when you put the little ampersand in between them, it spells fun.
Pretty darn close.
And also, luckily for us, fun is an Anglicism that a lot of French people use. Du bon fun. And so we decided that was going to be a very central theme of everything we do going forward.
Now, you also have the truck. So the cookie truck that a lot of people refer to. I mean, you go to events. You're at the Old Port of Montreal for the summer. It's certainly a bit of a flagship item or image or branding, because a lot of people see it. Does that come into play when you're thinking about rebranding? How am I going to have it done? How is the truck going to portray our new brand?
Well, absolutely. It's actually just finishing its complete makeover. The truck used to be chocolate brown, and now it's going to be a very bright pink. It's changing as much as Bruce Jenner just changed.
Well, it is kind of the brown male to a pink female, but we won't go into that. Is that... Now, I love this brand change, and I'm thinking colors, and yes, I'm an accountant, so I don't have that entire creative side, but I can just imagine the discussions that you're having around the table with your, with your spouse, who's very involved in the business, Gina, and certainly the creative people. Was it ever a frustrating point, like you just want to get something done and out, or did you just have so much fun with it?
As an accountant, I'm sure you can appreciate that the frustration came from, how much is this going to cost?
Exactly.
I love the whole creative side. I wish I could just keep writing checks, but it really there is so much that has to be changed because there wasn't a choice. Once we decided to change the branding, of course we had to change the truck, and of course we had to change our bags and our boxes and our website, and so this keeps on adding up.
No question. Now you also mentioned, and I know this is from past shows, but we'll start fresh. You're working with the bigger box stores, the grocery stores. How involved do they get with the packaging? How involved do they insist it be a certain way? Is it reselling them how it looks? Do you know, how do you deal with them as far as the rebranding and product goes?
Well, interestingly, when I first started, I worked exclusively with IGA, and they were very involved and suggesting ideas for the packaging. But now that we've done a whole rebranding and actually changed from the plastic tubs to resealable bags, and we basically just said, here's what we're doing. And they said, oh, that looks great. And that was that. There wasn't, so either we did it right, or they didn't feel that it was their place anymore to guide us, that we've matured as a company.
And now that you've been working with them for a good couple of years, IGA and Metro and the other stores, how have you found that experience? Has it been challenging? What kind of lessons have you learned?
Well, there isn't anything about business that isn't challenging. You're always up against so many obstacles. There's so much bureaucracy in these organizations. There's so many different people that you have to deal with and different opinions. And you might have this one on your side as your champion that you're working closely with. And whoops, they got transferred or they've left. And now you've got somebody new to start all over with. And that happens a lot in the retail business.
So you took your retail product and you gave it exclusively to IGA to start. If you were to redo things, would you go that same route again, giving your product over to someone exclusively to start and then sort of branching out?
Well, I think it helped a lot because they were very supportive and they did a lot of promotion of our product internally in their circulars, in their stores, and they were extremely supportive in things that I I couldn't have afforded to do on my own. So it was a great partnership. But at a certain time, we had to grow, and they understood sort of, so it was time for us to find other customers and other methods of distribution. Now what we're working on is a lot of new products.
And I was going to say, you know, it sounds like you, even though it's been 30 years and it's been some up and down years, but it's 30 years, the juices don't stop. You got to keep thinking. You got to keep thinking about the next best product or the next look. So what's next? What's next on tap for Felix and Norton?
Well, there are many new things coming soon. We are about to launch in partnership with a company that makes K-Cups for the Keurig coffee machines, a line of Felix and Norton cookie-flavored coffees and hot chocolates that will be on the market this fall. We're working with a local terrific high-end chocolatier chocolate manufacturer making cookie bites, chocolate-covered cookie bits that are going to come in 3 different flavors and sold in bags like some of the other big chocolate companies are doing, Kit Kat bites and things like that. We're going to have a Felix and Norton irresistible, can't stop eating chocolate bite product.
Sounds good. Lots of plans. Michael Eskenazi of Felix and Norton. You will hang around for a bit, and your cookies will as well. And we'll have Nick Moratis talking about tax season.
International business.
Oh, interesting. All right, that's up next on today's Entrepreneur. It's 7:45.
For professional advice with a personal touch, consult Fuller
3,
Landau,
2,
Chartered Professional Accountants and Business Advisors. Click on flmontreal.com.
Tonight on today's Entrepreneur, Michael Eskenazi of Felix and Norton. They're celebrating 30 years this week, as well as an expansion into the United Arab Emirates. And Josh will also bring in Nick Moratis, tax partner at Fuller Landau, into the conversation to talk, well, of course, about taxes, especially if you're doing business internationally.
Exactly, and there's no doubt these days where all the governments are, as we always say, they're broke and they're really trying to look for the next dollar wherever that may be, or the penny on the ground, as they as whatever they can get it. International business can also be a bit of a minefield, and with all the compliance and procedures and reporting, and of course understanding the other jurisdictions. So we'll turn to Nick, who somehow gets really excited about these things, and we'll look to him for guidance a little bit on some of these international businesses. What's the first thing, Nick, that pops into your mind when somebody says, "I want to do business with the Emirates or with China or with France, oh my goodness, or wherever"?
Well, tonight I was going to have a cookie before I respond, which I already did, so I'll continue.
Not just one,
just
but
one, yeah. Well, that's the thing when you're going into international, you have to realize that you're now dealing with another country's laws, which mean another country's tax laws. So you got two tax systems now looking at the dollars that you're going to be making. Canada has a system of tax treaties with many other countries, including the United Arab Emirates, that basically dictate, well, who's going to get to tax this dollar that you're going to be earning in the foreign country. And that becomes very key because there are some countries who don't have these treaties. And when you're doing business in those countries, you could be facing double taxation because Canada still wants to tax you because you're resident here, and the other country wants to tax you because you're doing business there.
So funds that flow into Canada from other countries when you're doing business, there could be taxes being paid over there or withheld?
That's right. And they're usually withholding taxes, and there's also local taxes that you're going to be paying over there. So when we're looking for a Canadian business looking to go offshore, a couple of things that we end up looking at is, well, first of all, are you setting yourself up in a manner that is taxable in the other country? You could be doing business with that other country, but are you set up that way? Or do you have an office there? Do you have an establishment there that is more or less permanent, which will usually trigger taxation in the local country? Are you setting up a subsidiary there? Or are you simply making a trade relationship, a trade agreement where you are providing, say, trade secrets for a royalty? You're doing a joint venture, as Mike, as you were speaking about in Mexico City, you wanted a joint venture. What is the structure of you doing this business in this foreign country?
So let's talk about the situation where it's a royalty, where it's trade secrets. You're selling your knowledge, your know-how, and in return you're getting a percentage of the sales.
And that's right. And it's basically what you're really looking to do is it is sometimes the simplest because you're not looking at doing any work yourself physically. You've given someone else the know-how to do that work, and you're going to be getting a percentage of the sales or something. And in most cases, the foreign countries will apply some sort of withholding tax against that royalty, usually determined with the treaty. It could be 0, it could be 10%, could be 15%. Without a treaty, who knows what it could be? It depends what the other country is going to want to tax. Here, Canada will at least recognize that you are paying that foreign tax and will credit you against whatever taxes you would be paying here, and it is going to be income here to Canada. And that seems to be a very quick and simple way to go international if you want that. Obviously, if you got bigger ideas and you want to set up a shop in the foreign country, you want your own people there, you want a joint venture with locals who know the business, but you want to have a part of that because it could be more profitable and more a wealth generator for yourself. Well, now you're into the whole stream of what the rules are, etc.
So very different if you're kind of dealing arm's length with a supplier or a partner you're not related to.
That's right.
Or if you're kind of dealing with yourself and you have your own subsidiary.
That's right.
When we come back from the break, we'll chat a little bit more about not dealing at arm's length.
And Michael Ashkenazy's one piece of advice for today's entrepreneur. That's next.
For professional advice with a personal touch, consult Fuller Landau, Chartered Professional Accountants and Business Advisors. Click on flmontreal.com.
Michael Ashkenazy of Felix and Norton with us, plus Nick Moraitis, a tax partner at Fuller Landau, talking about dealing abroad, which Michael now is in the United Arab Emirates, and the challenges it presents around tax time.
And there's no question that, and we were talking a little bit about the arm's length transaction before. You're dealing with somebody you're not related to, a supplier, and maybe getting some payments from them. But then there's a whole bunch of businesses that, don't want to deal with somebody that they don't want. They want to deal with themselves. So they'll open up their own subsidiary or branch or whatever. What are maybe some of the first things that entrepreneurs should think about when they're looking at doing that?
Well, you are looking at that, and I guess it's a question of long-term view. The branch seems to be the simplest one, which is simply an extension of the Canadian company. So now the Canadian company has an office in Montreal, and the Canadian company will have an office, say, in the United Arab Emirates. And whatever makes it down there will be taxed out there. And whatever it makes here in Canada will be taxed, and everything it makes anywhere in the world gets taxed by Canada. That's the simplest method, and many times you're looking at what the treaties usually turn around and talk about. We tend to shy away from these just opening up a branch because you're mingling what happens here with what's being reported in the foreign country, because they sort of, you're opening up your books to the foreign country. So many will then turn around and say, well, listen, I'm going to create a subsidiary. I'll go get a company in the UAE. That's where we set it up. And that company, with whatever it does, will be taxable in the UAE, and it'll be owned by a Canadian company over here. And then you're into the whole realm of I guess, transfer pricing, which is a whole realm unto itself.
That's a big word. I mean, transfer pricing is huge. What does that mean, transfer pricing?
It is the prices that are established between the parent company, say, and its subsidiary in a foreign country that could be viewed as you're playing around with profits. And that is a big issue going around the world right now, where they are looking at where low tax jurisdictions may have valuable assets, and they're charging a very large fee to, say, a company that is located in a high tax jurisdiction, and basically not paying taxes in the high tax jurisdiction and making billions of dollars of profits in the low tax jurisdiction. So that's something that is looked at. Here you have Canada is a unique system that unlike the U.S., which is a problem in the U.S., where a Canadian company who has a subsidiary elsewhere and is earning profits in that other country, is paying its taxes in that other country, can repatriate that money back into Canada without necessarily additional taxation when you're with a treaty country, which is very attractive from a Canadian perspective, because your cash can come back into Canada to be used here in Canada to either expand further or go out somewhere else.
So it's a plus.
It's a big plus from a Canadian perspective. I will now add one little thing, that Canadian entrepreneurs, there's always something we've talked about on this radio show every time I'm on, is capital gains exemptions. That when you're selling your business, there's an $800,000, actually now it's $813,000 of proceeds that you can receive and not pay any tax as a capital gain. That assumes that your company is a business here and running a business here in Canada. When you open up a plant in another country, a branch or a subsidiary, all of a sudden you're not running a business here in Canada anymore, you're offshore. That could hurt your capital gains exemption, could deny it. So that's why planning how to expand corporately when you're going offshore is something very important as well, that an entrepreneur has to keep in mind.
It's a question of degree, I guess. I mean, it's a question of facts, it's a question of degree.
Facts and degree, but if the foreign operation is hoping that you take off and becomes valuable vis-a-vis the Canadian, you will end up losing your capital gains exemption. So how you structure it becomes very important as well.
Excellent. Thanks very much, Nick. And as we come to to our last moments of today's entrepreneur, we'll turn to Michael, who has been around for 30 years in his business and is a veteran on this show. But we'll turn to him and say, Michael, what would your one piece of advice be to today's entrepreneur?
Be careful who you go into business with. I got very lucky, but I took a long time, as I said earlier. But I met somebody who shares my passion, who loves my product and my brand almost as much as I do, and it's really comforting to know that he's representing my company at the other side of the world. And it's just we've built a friendship and a trust that you really need to have in business, in partnership.
Do you remember that first day? 30 years ago?
Like it was yesterday. Actually, better than yesterday. I don't remember much about yesterday.
The memory hasn't faded yet. Anyhow, Dan, my takeaway, because we've concentrated on marketing, on rebranding, I think the takeaway for me is that entrepreneurs have to continue to keep an open mind, have to continue to know that whatever they've developed that was probably great and successful 30 years ago, 20 years ago, 10 years ago, has to constantly be refreshed. You have to reinvent yourself, and entrepreneurs that know, or that are looking enough ahead and not clinging to the past, know that they have to do just that.
And get out of your comfort zone on occasion, right?
Absolutely.
Michael Eskenazi of Felix and Norton, thanks so much for stopping by again this season.
Great to be here.
Nick Moretis of Fuller Landau, thanks very much. Josh, back next week, next Monday night here at 7 p.m. on News Talk Radio, CJAD 800. The Exchange with Lise Ravery is next. It's 8 o'clock.